Researcher at the Institute of Molecular Biology and Genetics of the National Academy of Science of Ukraine, Olga Borysenko, head of the Plasma Processing Kiev City Center, Anatoly Zamkovyy, head of the Blood Center of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, chief transfusiologist of Defense Ministry of Ukraine, and Iryna Slavitska, representative of the Association of Young Donors. You have the floor. Iryna Slavitska, excuse me. The floor is open. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. My name is Iryna Slavitska. I'm People's Deputy of Ukraine and Deputy Head of the Healthcare Committee. Unfortunately, today in our country we witness a situation when, over the long time of independence of our country, they failed to create a national blood service. The problem of the lack of donor blood is very acute today for the whole country of Ukraine, especially if we're talking about those territories which are today are part of the ATO operation. Those servicemen who are wounded, the peaceful civilian citizens who are wounded, including the explosion which took place a few days ago in Vasilkov, actually speak and demonstrate to all the country, to all the people who are involved in the healthcare system and all the officials, that the creation of the National Blood Center and Center for Donor Blood is one of the top priority issues for this country today, because we are talking about this as an issue associated with the national security of this country. I would like to emphasize that today, unfortunately, the Ministry of Health does not coordinate the activities of all those centers which deal with the blood sampling and blood collection, and which deal with this issue in the localities. Also, the cleaning, processing, and transfusion of blood for those who became victims. We still do not know the demand in the whole territory of Ukraine for blood. This is the problem which almost every day is raised by the military hospitals and the medical institutions over the whole territory of Ukraine. Now, all this makes us today to take steps to resolve this problem. We initiated this specific press briefing to talk over the issues, what we have today, what situation is available today, and we have to take some decision how we can come up with a new law of Ukraine on donor bloods and the blood and its components, how we can implement today the standards of European legislation which regulate this specific issue in the European Union and other countries of the world, and which is the best practice or best experience which exists. We have to draw from the source of this resource and create the necessary regulatory basis and adopt a new law in Ukraine. I'm happy that present here are specifically those experts who have been dealing with those problems for a long time now. May I welcome all of you, and I'll be happy if, based on the results of our joint efforts, in the nearest future we'll have the draft law in the new version about the blood donors of blood and blood from donors and its components. Thank you. The floor is given to the moderator of this event, Mr. Anatoly Chuhriyiv, President of Ukraine Blood Center. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this event for the fact that very important issue, organization of the blood service and providing the blood for the whole system of healthcare in Ukraine. Some figures: 0.6% of all doctors of Ukraine work in this system, but we actually provide the whole sector with blood, including our military guys. With your permission, I would briefly tell what we are and what we do. And then we'll switch over to those problems and those issues we have today. If I may, my presentation, may I remind you the dynamics of the structure of the service blood in Ukraine is divided into three major structures. Regional blood centers or regional blood transfusion centers. Their number hasn't changed over the last 6 years. The divisions of transfusiology as part of the hospitals, they are not subordinated to the blood centers, but they are inside the hospitals, and their number has changed. Just to compare what we had, 450 departments of this kind. This is the country with a 120 million population. Again, and those which actually are taking care of the banks of blood, according to the regulatory document, it is permitted by this function is not typical for the surgical departments out of which they operate, but anyway, we have to change the situation here. The doctors' banks of blood is a new name which is in compliance with the requirements of Europe. We're talking about the structural divisions which provide all departments in the hospitals with the blood components. And accordingly, if there is such possibility, they also they prescribe the immunological studies between the donors and the recipient. Again, this is prescribed by the Director of European Council of Europe. Dynamics of the major indicators. Practically, it is not changed, but if we calculate over the last 6 years, we have reduction approximately by 1%. We are talking about number of donors, the amount of the total number of the blood donors and albumin donors. But I would like to draw your attention to the fact that the major function of the blood center is to provide the hospital's blood. So this indicator reduced by 0.6% over the last 6 years. I don't know whether they place orders or not, but there is a problem. The major indicators of different structures of the blood service, you can find them in the Ministry of Health. Unfortunately, the analytical data, statistical analytical data, now analysis is not carried out for such structures. It's very difficult to say what's the contribution of each of those structures. So today we are talking about up to 40% of blood components are given by the transfusion departments in different hospitals. So the majority, the more of the blood components are prepared or delivered by these structures. You were talking about the reduction of the term of storage down to 40 days and sometimes to 30 days. Determines the situation that we have to replenish the reserves of those components and blood on a regular basis. How we use that? What we have to start with, over the 2013, we prepared almost 616 tons. We used 53%, 17.5% we had to cancel because of the expiration of the term. So the simple question is, do we have enough erythrocytes for the hospitals? As we can see, we can judge by those figures, we can say yes, but we have to properly use those, and we have to create the system of management, of reserve management, blood reserve management, and to know where we are. We compare it with the Council of Europe. There was a report for 2008. Well, we can say that the data for 2008, the principle recognized by the WHO and was supported by the the European Union and Council of Europe is the self-procurement, or let's say self-provision of each country with the blood and its components. In order to provide this kind of self-support, we have to 2% of the population have to become donors. In Ukraine, this figure is 1.3, and the average figure for EU is 2.9. This is the indicator which is associated with the we have 18.45 and 39 on the average in the European countries. Plasma is prepared by using methods of phoresis. This is a separate issue. It's more high quality, more clean, and allows us to preserve the cells of the donor blood, use it during procedure. So the level is twice as little as compared to the European countries. Plasma, which is used for the fractioning for albumin and globulin and the factors of blood congestion, we have again a lower figure than the Council of Europe, and they used the erythrocytes for the previous slide. If here, whether we use this in sufficiently or not, we have 7.9 liter, per doses, and for 1 doses per capita in European countries. I believe that such indicators must be more thoroughly studied, especially if we are talking about utilization of the red blood cells in their preparation. I would like to offer for our discussion, maybe for some further initiatives, the changes or initiatives which in our opinion require attention, adoption of the law of Ukraine on the national or state blood centers. We have some analogs of that in some of the European countries, and they actually determine the status and provisions of the blood. Again, the provisions which were adopted in 1999, which have changed little regarding the donor blood and components, and again the recommendation of the requirements of the Council of Europe and the WHO is to provide something to prepare the necessary conditions for the donor blood. And also we have to establish the relationship between those centers and the medical institutions. And those relations are not regulated, and this problem has been raised by many experts. We cannot actually try and make it exchange between the regions, etc., etc. And then what regards the activities of the chief physicians of the hospitals, we believe that the first steps should be taken which do not require any expenditures to create, to set up the expert committee in the regions. We could use some kind of the assisting working group to create an analytical center as part of the medical institute or any other structure, because first of all we need the analytical data in order to determine the tendencies and the problems, and to continue the training for the quality experts, which does not require much money. And today, for example, this is the in other countries it could be for presidential foundation or fund. You can see here a number of proposals. I'm not going to read them out loud. If you agree with those, everybody can speak up their minds, to provide their comments. Thank you for your attention. Now, anybody who wishes to say thank you, Anatoly, for your presentation. Really, those proposals which you're going to discuss and maybe agree upon as a result of our first roundtable, I really wish all of you to discuss that, and this so that we could implement this resolution as soon as possible. Thank you. So, who would like to be the first to take part in this discussion? Larissa Vakhnenko, right. Yet in 2007 I proposed unpatented, which was not patented, the creation of the National Transfusion Agency, National Blood Service Agency, which is in line with what was mentioned by Anatoly. We do not have the coordination center in the blood service, which would actually take care of all the services. If you're talking about provision of blood and blood components for the local citizens of this country, this is not the issue pertaining to the Ministry of Health, but also to national security. That's why the blood center should not be subordinated to the Ministry of Health. That's my opinion. And to no less degree, it pertains to the Minister of Defense, the Minister of the Committee of Emergency, Minister of the Interior. This body must be intra-departmental and be subordinated directly to the cabinet ministers. We are talking about the formation of national policy for the procurement, processing, and the provision of blood and blood components. And here the agency has to have all the structures pertaining to this issue, irrespective of the form of ownership. And the importance of this structure is critical, especially during the time of warfare. And the provision of the blood and blood components is dealt with is not only by the Minister of Defense, but not the Minister of Health, but Minister of Defense, Ministry of Emergency, and also volunteers. Unfortunately, we do not have today the national database of donors or base of the ready blood reserves. We do not have the database of the demand requirements of the medical institutions for individual citizens who suffer from blood diseases, whatever. So in this situation, I believe it would be reasonable to have the national blood transfusion agency, which will take care of all those issues. During the World War II, the Ministry of Health of the USSR proved to be a very good organizer, and together with the Red Cross, they provide blood and the very good level. So I would like to continue those good traditions regarding the blood service. Today, the Ministry of Health has a weak organizational function, and now when we witness a lot of soldiers, a lot of wounded, and a lot of soldiers prepared to become donors, but in the donor centers we didn't see a lot of civilians there. I believe in the times of warfare, the most of the donors must come from among civilians, and the soldiers or servicemen must make the reserve, so to say. We do not have regulatory basis. That's why this center must prepare and adopt the draft regulatory documents or instruments, which we do not have today. Anatoly Nikolaevich already mentioned that we do not have very important orders and resolutions. I would like to remind you Order 155, which regulated the activities of the transfusion stations and the blood station centers. And we knew in those days what this, let's say, blood center had to do. And now we are at a loss. We do not know what to do now with some of the transfusion centers and stations are closed, some of others are still operational, but the Minister of Health cannot affect this situation. There is no order. They cannot make anybody do anything. On the one hand, when they were closing the municipal blood centers, there were some representatives of the Ministry of Health. They gave their consent to the closure of that center, but was the time passing. And later, when the National Center for Promotion of Combating Corruption, they raised that issue and they sent a letter to the Minister of Health for them to help to open the production department in the blood center. The Minister of Health responded that the finance of the blood center should be provided not by the Minister of Health. That's why we do not have any managerial authorities. So in some cases they do have some influence, in other cases not. So we do need the regulatory basis to prepare this kind of the National Transfuse Agency, as we call it. I would like to remind you how the blood services worked in the Red Cross during the World War II. Even in the Leningrad under blockade, the civilians gave their bloods for soldiers. I would like to talk about the lack of PPP. Private enterprises development now. I'm talking about pharmacological enterprises who deal with the processing of plasma and plasma medical preparations. Unfortunately, to much regret, our state does not control, is not dealing with the coordination of this partnership. PPP, I'm talking about against the background of the ruined and corrupted blood service. They establish very powerful factories, enterprises, which are forced to obey or to be subordinated to this kind of not well organized blood service. And we have to break this bad chain. We have to create the necessary conditions for private business, because we are going towards Europe, and we have to promote or to contribute to the export potential in Ukraine. In order to have export potential, the private business must be transparent, and it can be transparent when we have the very much transparent blood service. And the function of the National Transfusion Agency is to unite the national and the private business, so the private business would not dominate, as it is the case now, over the national blood service. The matter is, the Minister of Health issued the permission for the export of the plasma preparation. On the one hand, it's good. We are for the export potential. On the other hand, there were a lot of letters to the Minister of Health from the patients suffering from hemophilia, that they elect those medical preparations. So we have to coordinate the efforts of the Minister of Health and the activities of the private enterprises, so that they not only work for the expert, but also for the sake of our population. This coordination must be ensured by the National Transfusion Agency. By all means, the National Transfusion Agency must take part in the information investment policy. Those investments which are used for the blood service and private sector must be regulated. Some of the companies can have those investments and further develop, and others became impoverished. So this issue should be coordinated as well. And this agency must ensure coordination of the activities of the research institutions and other players, irrespective of their form of ownership. And the transfusion agency must, of course, coordinate the free and paid donor services. We have some organizations which can deal with this, can shoulder this activity, but this must be under the state control, which was the case. The cooperation with between the state institutions and Red Cross Society during the World War II. Thank you for your very interesting information proposals. I would like to say that the blood service is the least corrupted service. We do not have patients or their relatives we do not treat. They are just come to us and we have to issue or to provide some blood like you do. But this is a separate issue. Thank you. Of course, there will be a lot of questions. Anatoly Zamkovyy, how can you assess this kind of coordination? It's everybody's knowledge that the blood service has a strategic importance for this country. We are talking about the military, medical institutions for this special period you are going through. What are the major problems we encounter in the military blood service today? The major reason is the absence of the regulatory or legislative base to give the blood components from one department to another one. There is a instruction or directive of 2008 which prohibits, well, actually this was approved by the Cabinet of Ministers, which regulates the processing, storage and transfer of the donor blood and components to another department. Also, it is necessary to introduce amendments to this directive. Also, we have to introduce amendments to the law on the donorship and donor blood. The Minister of Health at the beginning of this year sent the letters to the regional administrations which contain the recommendations, since the transfusion stations and the blood centers are supported by local budgets. I would say I know that only 6 regions passed the decision regarding the transfer of blood components to the ATO zone free of charge. The rest of the regions they passed, I would say, a different decision. Today, of great importance is the safety of the donor blood. The safety of donor blood, when we take this blood and its analysis, today the blood is analyzed by the old methods, but we have to introduce even hemoluminescent methods in the different reactions. In addition to immune enzyme method, and this will allow us to increase the quality of blood which we transfuse to our citizens, including the wounded ones. And nobody can give the guarantee that this blood is not contaminated with some kind of infection. The military medicine, we would like military medicine to be powerful, and we actually provide what we can with the ATO zone and the ATO area. But if the combats become more intensive, as you can see, the number of the wounded and the sick persons will increase. That's why we badly need the legislative basis which will allow us to coordinate the activities of the blood service together with the Minister of Health, and we are for creating the single coordination center, and so this service become the single service, not to face any problems associated with it, with giving these blood and blood components to the places of destination, to the military hospitals and other hospitals where the military medical teams are working today. Thank you, Anatoly. Indeed, perhaps when each region has to have some structure, maybe we're talking about some kind of regulatory document on the level of Cabinet of Ministers or something else. And Hryhoriy, I believe, has a very interesting idea about what we are talking about. I would like to draw attention to the problem which has been already raised by the previous speaker. I'm talking about the safety. I would like to talk about the viral safety of the donor blood and the preparations produced on the basis of this blood. For 14 years, I've been dealing when we in Kiev, with the head of which was Olga Borysenko. I was dealing with the development of this method, which was mentioned by my colleague, which best way meets the requirements of today, which have to be provided in order to resolve this problem. Seemingly, we had even some of these normative or regulatory documents which demanded or required from some of the certain officials of the Ministry of Health to control the same albumins when processing blood, and that order was issued back in 2005 and signed, but actually it was not translated into lives. There were some approaches separate. They were saying that these were very expensive method, but there is a better one, or no less good one, molecular methods. They were talking about the hemoluminescent method, but this is not the method which can guarantee us the success. It can exist parallel to that, but in such a way that we had both. Hemoluminescent method does not allow to reach the sensitivity which we require, and because of that, in my opinion, we have to create the structure or a structure. I would say entitled the National Reference Center, which would be basing their activities on the same standards with the highly skilled experts, analyze the materials which would be transferred there using the chain cold change, some samples of blood. They have to be analyzed over a short period of time, within 36 hours, and they have to pass decision whether this is a good material or it should be, let's say, destroyed. And then we should not freeze the plasma for 3 years that they propose now. Why we should freeze something which can get fresh material? And speaking about the components which can be produced on basis of this plasma, they could be of higher quality in the same globulin, whatever. And so if you follow the proper ideology of working with this material, we avoid the problems. According to my research, the results I obtained, over 14 years of this research, we analyzed about 25,000 doses based on the material which we received from the Kiev center. In some specimens, some samples, we already had the verified, I emphasize verified blood. 10% of those verified, they were contaminated with some virus. In Europe, the same indicator, one contaminated dose may be 1 per 3 million doses, and we have 10%. So where we have the war? In ATO area or here? So I believe those regulatory documents must be properly drafted, and we have some experience how to do that, because we based our activities on the European Ehrlich Institution experience, and we try to implement this specific approach. I believe we have to start with this step. Proper regulatory and normative steps, then to see what is the best experience or practice, and make use of this experience or practice. Thank you, Hryhoriy. The only thing which I would like to add, in order to support what has been said by Hryhoriy, you know that our plasma is preserved in quarantine mode for 6 months. After quarantine of plasma, we actually extract about 2,500 doses, because they find in donor's blood some contaminants, infectious agents. But this is a big issue, maybe we can ask the organizers to support us, maybe organize a separate roundtable for the safety of the donor blood, because this is a kind of multifaceted issue, problem issue, I would say. What do you think, Ivan? A few words from the point of view of production. We had some experience when one of the blood centers, they closed the department dealing with the blood plasma processing. And the reason that, on the decision of the chief physician, that this department did not meet the requirements of sanitary hygienic requirements. I was approached by a number of people, the scholars, scientists, very well-known people in this country who actually did everything in order to develop the science in the realm of blood science, and they had their achievements. And they said that this kind of the unjustified closure of the blood processing departments can lead to some kind of monopolizing of this specific business and deprive the state from the control over, or be detrimental to the free of charge provision of the local population with blood and blood components. We also had the information that the department was closed. It was not cost effective. It would be better and more cost effective to process this plasma in the city of Lugansk. But you remember what happened to the city of Lugansk several months later. We were completely deprived of the possibility to process this plasma, and plasma was stored in some storages and sitting there and waiting to be processed. We are not against business development in this country. Any business has a right to existence, but we believe that those blood preparations which are vitally needed must be under control of the state. They have to be accessible from point of view of the economic or financial accessibility or any kind of other aspect of accessibility or access. We believe that this component is ignored by the state, while mother has to run around the city trying to find the required blood. When the parents whose children suffer from hemophilia, why they have to buy necessary preparations abroad. We are talking about the situation when our citizens are deprived of the right to have or to obtain the medical preparations were critical for their life. So if we're talking about we have to take into consideration when we're talking about the creation of the National Blood Center, we have to pay attention to the following aspects: the production and processing of blood components or preparations, and we have to, and the provision for the population must be to maximum extent accessible. We have to understand, first of all, that we are talking about the sick person or sick kid. And then second of all, this is a business. And before closing any kind of medical institution, we have to set up some kind of alternative conditions which could compensate those losses or compensate the provision of the population with the blood components. And only after that we have to start constructing big medical factory. And to rectify the situation available today. So thank you very much for your attention. I'm prepared to participate in a real serious discussion of this topic. Thank you. We have the youngest participant in our round table, and who represents the young donors. Iryna, you have the floor. Thank you. Yes, indeed, I represent here the public sector, and I'm head of the Young Donors of Ukraine organization, and we did not expect any amendments in the legislation or creation of some single center, transfusion or whatever else. For 2 times the state failed to create the National Register of Donors. We started to create our own project, which is called Donor UA. This is the first automated and single database of recipients and donors of blood in Ukraine. Some of whom we are technologically connected, but we try to establish the contacts with all of those involved. This project helps all donors in territory of Ukraine, citizens of Ukraine, to become registered, those who would like to become donors and help us. We have a single base of recipients who badly need this assistance or help. We register them personally, and later they will have the chance to self-register on our site. We also propose to translate into live, let's say, to install the terminals in all the hospitals where both the physician who doesn't have the technical support at the transfusion station or any kind of patient can say about the donor help, because we are encountering the scary realities when the granny, the aged woman from the western Ukraine comes to Kiev with a long list of the medications or whatever she has to buy. This is not a local person. She doesn't know who to address, and she doesn't even understand where she can take approach those people. So she kneels down in the street and helps, and actually cries out for help to everybody who can help her. So we do not expect the legislative amendments in legislation. We just try to work ourselves. And we cooperate with all the volunteers in the territory of Ukraine. Once again, I call upon all the representatives of the blood services and blood transfusion center stations to join us in our project, because this is, once again, I repeat myself, this is the first automatic database for registration. And again, we have to take care of the national register. Who is going to take care of this national register? This question is to everybody. Who is going to join us? Who knows how to do that? What has to be done? What we have to start with? What we do not have is ever with this knowledge, but what to do that? Well, if I may to speak up my mind, and this all starts with the fact when a moment when a person comes to us voluntarily and offers his or her blood. So and this person will officially be registered in some database if he was examined properly, and if this person remains donor or among the donors, he or she can be preserved in this database. If he does not meet some requirements, the name of this person will be struck out of this register. But let's say if you're talking about the proper rules, of correct rules to be observed, then this person will be properly registered. So if this will become the first step, this is my opinion. Will you please tell me, your recipients know the name of the donor, the blood of whose was transfused? According to the law on the protection of personal data, the recipient doesn't have the right to know about that, but speaking in principle, we gather donors, and with the consent of the parents, we send this information to the parents. Do we pay for that? No. The matter is that this is confidential, this confidential system. In no way the recipient has to know whose blood is transfused to him. As for the register, the national register, I don't know how attentive you were in listening to what I was saying. When we are going to have this National Transfusion Agency of the Blood Service, it will be a central agency to take care of the let's say, propaganda of donorship. We are talking about the radio, TV, booklets, meant for different layers of the, let's just right there, the population. The most important is to create the transfusion agency. When somebody will be the managing the blood service. I'm sorry, this idea which you're working on, how old this idea is? The matter is, I'm writing about the reorganization of the blood service for a long time, but the problem is nobody hears us, and we actually gathered here to change the situation, to make blood safe. This is a very good idea, so let's work together to implement this, translate this into why my question, how old this idea is, because the association has been in existence since 2006 and providing help to citizens of Ukraine. So we have this the same year, the National All Ukrainian Register of Donors, and and we are talking about the idea of creating some kind of national center. It could take 20 more years. We have to do something now. So let's join our efforts, pool our efforts. Everybody can contribute to this. We can talk about this. We have the public and the experts, not only the blood service and the clinicists. We can actually determine what we can do. And that the donorship must be on a voluntary basis on the national level. This is a common understanding, but when and how to do that. When we approach the educational establishment, they say, yeah, our curriculum, we have 2 hours, academic hours for about donor service. For example, in Japan, the emperor's family actually takes care of that. They keep an eye on the donorship or on a donor service. If you allow me, let's sum up what we've talked about. We actually outlined the problems, the donor blood safety, setting up of some coordination body or agency, formation of the national donor policy, and provision of our servicemen or military guys with the blood components. In other words, creating some kind of the mechanism for that. So those are 5 or 6 problems which are most burning, and we really have to discuss those. In my proposal is actually this is my proposal. You can add something to that. Maybe we have to break down into different steps of those problems, and we have to come up with some format of discussion, and the prioritization, and the ideas which will come to the minds of the participants of our round table. Let's commit those ideas to the paper, propose this to our deputies, respective deputies, and then see what we can do that, and work in very consistent and way. Thank you. We have time for a couple of questions, if there are any questions on the part of journalists, or maybe some specifications. Please introduce yourselves and speak into the microphone. Well, anyway, you have to use the microphone in order to be translated. I have translation to the young donors. Recently, I encountered this problem. How do you think there is a problem to collect this blood and to put this information in your register? No. We do not propose the blood to our clients. We can offer the free of charge donors who can provide their blood free of charge. The quality of blood is controlled by the state. There are some public or state-run institutions which are responsible for the quality of the blood. Any more questions? If none, I'm sorry, one more thing which I forget to say. Another problem to be added to that, the production, manufacturing of the blood preparations. Well, we have to think about that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Which brings